Good evening, everyone. My name is David Wood. I am the Programs Director for Early Music America, and I want to welcome everyone to this first of 3 trivia nights that we'll be hosting as part of our Well-Tempered Musician series that will be going between January and March. We'll have one of these a month, and we hope that you'll come back each time to play along with us. And we're going to learn a little bit more about how you can do more trivia even between now and February from our guests. And this evening, we are with members of the Bach and Beethoven Experience. And they have been running a trivia program basically since the pandemic started, and are old hat at this. And we're really happy that they partnered with us to present these 3 trivia nights as part of the Wellness series. So I want to welcome the 3 members that we have with us this evening. We have Leanne Dale Ragusa and Thomas Allen and Brandy Berry Benson. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Totes.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So I wanted to, I'm going to ask you a few questions here so everybody can sort of learn a little bit about the ensemble before we get into the trivia, and then we're going to learn about each one of you a little bit throughout the evening, throughout this next hour or so. But the first thing is and maybe I'll start with Thomas as the executive director. We'll have you start. Explain to us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Bach Beethoven Experience and what sort of the mission and the goal and what it is you all do.
Sure. Actually, Brandy probably is the better person to do this because she was the founding member. Can I pass it to Brandy? Because I feel bad answering for her.
Brandy, go right ahead.
All right. Well, so the Bach and Beethoven Experience actually started off as the Bach and Beethoven Ensemble. I had co-founded it with Curtis Foster, who lives in Seattle, Washington now. And so, we started off as, a bunch of Indiana grads just wanting to add to the early music scene here in Chicago and make more early music happen. And then, we, after some years had passed and Curtis moved over to the West Coast, the BBE went through a bit of a transition, and I met Thomas for the 3rd time very serendipitously through the same mutual friend. Turned out that, of course, we had met very briefly back in the DFW area because he was attending TW at the same time, or we had overlapped one of the years that I was at UNT. And so then in 2009, we reunited with the same mutual friend, but it turned out we had both independently moved up here to Chicago without knowing it. And then we reconnected again in 2014. And that's when we decided, hey, let's, pick up things. Let's actually, change the structure of the BBE a little bit, instead of being a gigging ensemble, we, started to have a board of directors, which we, obviously still have today. We got our 501c3 status. And, we decided we wanted to focus more on projects that bring early music into community. And so everything that we did was really based on how can we get great music into spaces that normally wouldn't experience this music. And so not long after that, we added Leanne as our development director. And so, and it's been, great ever since. When we hit the pandemic, like a lot of people had to do, it was kind of like, well, now what do we do? Because just like everybody else had experienced, cancellation after cancellation. I mean, I know that we all went through like at least 2 months worth of like, all right, which email is going to show up again, today to tell us whatever is not happening, or being postponed or whatnot. We decided, well, we can't really be out performing live like we want. So let's do something a little different. And I think it was actually Thomas's idea to like, what if we did like a trivia night, or a trivia day or whatever. And so then we started BBE Live. Actually, our first episode was May 15th with Curtis Foster, who was, my original co-founder and bud, still my buddy. Hi, Curtis, if you're out there. And then we've been doing that ever since, every week. And it's been quite a ride. We've had some great people on, and can't can't imagine a better crew to navigate through this crazy world thing that we're having to all do. So.
What so how many do you think you've done of the trivia? How many is it now?
Well, I mean, she said, I'm glad you went and looked. You said May something. We've done one.
Yeah.
We've done one pretty much every week.
Yeah.
So how many weeks are there in a year? And
Yeah.
So June, July, August, September, October, November, December.
Yeah,
Wow.
30. I mean, if you think roughly 30, I think is, yeah. And I only knew that date because of a grant proposal we recently did. So there you go.
Yeah. And we've done a few specials, like we did a Halloween special where we put together this whole crazy story about like, it's based off of Hocus Pocus, where the Sanderson sisters are in hell and they have to find their way around, and that was fun. And then we did a Christmas and a holiday and a New Year thing too. So we do some special events as well.
Yeah, that was actually in partnership with the DePaul Humanities Department, and that was a cool because it was like a haunted Zoom room kind of concept. So the Sanderson and Thomas did this excellent like PowerPoint of like the Sanderson sisters, confronting all the horrors of quarantine life, getting spritzed with hand sanitizer and like not being able to find the toilet paper, all that good stuff. But yeah, and then the carols, we usually that's something that Leanne curates every year, and so this time around we had to. We had Krista Patton and Stephanie Hunt join us on that, and so that was really interesting. Going like, all right, so we're obviously going to put this in layers, right? And recording, it's like who goes first, and whatever. So that was pretty fun to be like, Tag, you're it. And sorry, the drilling literally started like not long. Like it's been quite. We haven't had like construction like things in our building for a long time, and then all of a sudden the drilling started, like for no apparent reason, and it's 7 p.m. here, so apologies for that. So.
We persevere.
Yep.
Glories of quarantine. That's the next COVID edition. Is just random labor things that just start.
Well, Leanne's out in sort of the country because she's in Bloomington. I mean, Brandy and I are in Chicago, so like, I'm surprised we haven't heard at least 5 cop cars, a couple police officers, and somebody screaming outside yet. So
something to look forward to.
I mean,
Yeah.
The rest of the time. Well, can you tell me a little bit? I know you guys have an upcoming project recording from the ensemble. You talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into trivia after that.
Who wants to handle that one? I can do that one if you want. Okay, so like one of the things that Brandy mentioned, we like to take music out into the communities, and so even though our name is Bach and Beethoven, we actually do a lot of like folk but Baroque crossover music, a lot of arrangements written by Brandy, which are pretty fun. But one of the things that we started doing a few years ago is we started doing a whole program of new commissions for period instruments, which we call Chicago Stories, because all of the music is inspired by either people or communities or groups in Chicago. It's written by Chicago composers, primarily Chicago musicians. Leanne kind of migrates in, but other than that, otherwise everybody lives in the city.
Pretty much lives here. So.
Yeah, and
but
so
I'm from the area.
Yes, she's totally Chicago. It's fine. No problem. And so it's been a really, really fun project because we work for about 9 or 10 months identifying a composer. They basically have free reign to find like a community or subject that they want to write about. They find and collect stories, do interviews, learn more about some of the issues or topics and the people in those communities. They work with Brandy and the other BBE musicians to learn how to write for period instruments, because obviously if you're writing for like a Baroque violin or like a countertenor, it's a little different than maybe like a modern instrument. So this is for a lot of them the first time they've ever written for a period instrument. And we do read-through sessions where we work with them, give them feedback, and they can kind of tweak things. And then we find locations in communities either adjacent to or directly related to the communities that the music's based on. So some of the communities that we've had pieces written about are like the Pilsen area, which is kind of an immigrant area for Latinx people. One of the really cool ones, one of my favorites, is by Eric Malmquist, who wrote about the Assyrian population in Chicago. And I mean, it just kind of goes out from there. Like we've had, I think, how many? 7 commissions, 8 commissions,
I mean,
and
yeah, like 6 total related to Chicago stories, but we've had other commissions outside of that too.
Yeah, and the next big thing. So we'll put it up at the very end, but we decided to do a recording of the Chicago stories that we've commissioned so far. So that'll be our 3rd studio album, which is really exciting. We'll have a release party on Saturday, and we're looking forward to, when COVID is over, our plan is we're going to do a Chicago Stories oratorio that's going to be in 4 parts. And the first part's hopefully done next year. It was supposed to be this year, but
I mean,
how it works. So it's going to be same concept. So full-blown oratorio, 4 parts, new music about Chicago stories. The first part is going to be about the Chicago fire. And some adjacent issues around that. And hopefully we'll have that one out in a year or something, but no promises on that one. We have to kind of see how it goes.
Well, yeah, and I'll also throw in there too, what's really unique about this, project, Thomas talked a lot about like the personal aspect of the fact that the composers are going out to collect stories, and then we work, very closely with the composers for these 9-10 months, which is long. That's a long time. But also we end up building all those relationships. But I think the other thing too, he mentioned the Assyrian, stories. Eric actually sat down with 2 refugees and set their story of how they escaped a war-torn Iraq and came and found refuge here in Chicago, and set that to music. So they're very personal stories. Same thing with the Pilsen story. The composer, he grew up with a band of Mexican brothers who immigrated here from Mexico, who are preserving the culture, particularly the Latin jazz culture in Pilsen, and wrote songs based off of their journey as well. And so, the other thing too is the instrumentation combinations that came out of all this. I mean, our album kicks off with a piece that's written for traverso, recorder, cornetto, baroque violin, and viola da gamba. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know of any other pieces out there where the traverso and the cornetto are on the same piece. We're bringing like centuries together in that way too, with that very specific instrument combination, and even like the stage that came out of like mixing and what instruments kind of consider similar and more like each other and things like that. I mean, it's been a really cool just journey of just and I think that's why a lot of composers really love this idea of writing new music for old instruments, because it just gives them another palette of sounds. And then because we're not bound by century or what's available anymore, everything's available. Now you can do all kinds of, combinations that you couldn't before. So it's a really, really cool thing, that we have there that, I'm excited. It's one of our most favorite projects for sure, that we do. So anyway.
That's cool. And speaking of new meets old, that's actually our theme for this evening's trivia. And so maybe without further ado, we'll learn a little bit more about each of you over the next little bit. But why don't we dive into trivia? And this is where you all take over. And so I'll bring us into the screen share so that we can go, and I'll hand the reins over to Thomas. And is Leanna, your section? Remind me who's going first this evening.
I am. Yep.
Leanne will go first, but first.
Nottingham Vale, boys, Nottingham Vale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham Vale. Nottingham Vale, boys, Nottingham Vale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham Vale. Nottingham Vale, boys, Nottingham Vale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham Vale. Nottingham Vale, boys, Nottingham Vale, no liquor on earth is like Nottingham Vale.
And people out at home will probably recognize a lot of those faces, and we've had a lot more on since then too. So, and one of them should be very familiar, David, who is going to be our in-person guinea pig, because we have to have somebody that we can kind of torture a little bit. So for most of you who are out here, you may not have seen our show before, probably not. We like to do a little fun trivia. Each of us takes a different game. Leanne will be first up. And Leanne, if you would describe your game for us so people at home can play along.
All right. So my game, it's kind of, there's the Sordid Lives of Composers, but today it's New Music Edition. So the way it works is I read a paragraph about a composer who has written early new music for early instruments. There will be 4 composers' names on the screen, and you get to choose. It's my choice. But after I finish the paragraph, it's kind of like Jeopardy, and we're going to play a little thinking music, so you have some time to mull over what the answer is. And if you're playing along at home, feel free to give us your answers or help us if we don't know the answer. All right.
We definitely need help on names.
Yeah. So, but let's get started. So the first question, originally from France, this actor and composer frequently performs in Quebec and Canada on traverso recorder and various other flutes from around the world. Not only does he specialize in Baroque music, he is interested in a variety of styles like medieval, Irish, Arab, and Sephardic. As a composer, he has composed and produced several soundtracks for various live painting musical performances, television series, a European circus, as well as a Chinese circus. Additionally, he wrote a play for young audiences whose main subject is the discovery of Baroque music. He has written several new pieces for old instruments, including a triple concerto for flute, violin, harpsichord, and orchestra that was commissioned by Tafel Music Baroque Orchestra, as well as a piece for solo viola da gamba, variations on La Folia for solo flute, and many compositions for a group called La Mandragore, which is a group that's dedicated to music and songs from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance. Now, this is the part in the show where I get to butcher everyone's names because I am not fluent in all these different languages. So if I pronounce it wrong, I am really sorry. But if somebody at home knows how to pronounce these things, please let me know. So is this composer Christos Hatzis, Gregoire J, James Rolfe, or Bernhard Boom? But first, a little thinking music.
This is the part where I say, Leanne, you lost me at this composer.
I mean,
but guess what? Since David is our guest, he gets to try first. So
a little bit of insight going into this, but I'm also going to play along with. We're going to represent some of the folks playing along from home, and going to go with the overwhelming choice from those playing along at home, which is B. And I think this is where we actually had a conversation beforehand that we need help if anybody knows how to pronounce his name. Are we correct?
Right. And I mean, I know him in person, but I never call him by his last name. I have no idea. I don't know how you, Mr. J. But I'm really sorry.
Hopefully he will not be watching this.
He's probably writing some more circus music. So, but all right. Yes. So B is definitely correct. Let's go on to question number 2. This keyboardist, conductor, and composer is from Dallas, Texas, Brandy. He received his bachelor's and master's degrees in composition from the University of North Texas. He graduated from the historical performance program at Juilliard, and he also studied at Yale. He is an active member of several New York-based early music and contemporary ensembles. As a composer, he has written works that combined Baroque performance techniques and altered tuning systems. He has written 3 specific Baroque instrument just intonation works, including a sonata for violin and general bass, which he uses stordatura for both the violin and the harpsichord, which kind of warps the relationship between the true intervals. He also wrote a canzona for bass solo, which is very episodic in form, and he wrote a prelude and fugue in 21 tones, where he lifted the theme from Bach's D-sharp minor fugue, and he sort of warped it into a new melody by also using the just intonation tuning on the harpsichord. So, who is this composer? Is it David Eaton, Tom Foster, Elliot Fig, or Frederick Renz? But first, a little thinking music.
Yeah, I have to say, does anybody else get a David Schrader vibe from this picture?
Yeah, definitely.
It's a little similar.
I have never seen him wear this.
I know. I found this
You
picture.
wouldn't
I was
doubt
like,
it.
wow.
I'm like, okay. I have so many stories about this person that, like, both good and funny. So.
And I have to say that I have insider knowledge because Brandy and I were both at University of North Texas with this guy. And so I have had the pleasure of performing with him also. I did not know these for everybody watching home. I didn't know any of these questions in advance, but I happen to know from the picture. Had you just said all those things without showing me his picture, I might not have known. I probably would have guessed.
Yeah.
But got any other guesses from those, or any for those playing along? Feel free to stick them in the comments really quick before we give this away.
Well, it kind of looks like
without even having to guess, right?
It kind of looks like the entire Berwick Fiddle Consort says it's C.
Thomas, have you met this person, Thomas? I think
No.
UNT around you might not have crossed paths, but yeah.
You know, because I went to Texas University, which was the stepsister to UNT across the street, but like I was only there just to go into the library, so like I didn't have much contact.
Hey, Berwick Fiddle Consort, we've played with this person too.
I think a lot of people have played with this person. Maybe.
Yeah, Karin, it is a UNT cabal.
Well, I guess we should go ahead and say, we had someone. We do have or at least a shout out for one of the other suggestions here. So maybe we should reveal the because I mean I don't know if I want to reveal it. Leanne, do you want to reveal?
Sure. I think we all know it's C. It's Elliot Fig. And I found this picture and I love this picture, so I had to use it.
Actually, I do remember one of his first compositions when he was like, really going into a Ligeti phase, and he had made, and it was based off of like Bieber or something. I'm like drawing a blank, but he was really experimenting with like, temperament, and wrote this really cool. It was I think one of his first compositions, like venturing into early music things. If I recall correctly, sorry Elliot if I don't, but I remember at UNT that you wrote this, and like Renata van de Fiber I think played it with him. So anyway, it was cool. And you're still very cool. I hope we see each other again.
That was my first experience with contemporary music written for period instruments. Was hearing his collections and or his compositions. So, yeah.
Great.
Cool.
All right.
You're famous, Elliot. You made it on the BB.
I know, right? All right. Well, we have one more question for my game. So, this Canadian-born, Scotland-based composer grew up in Nova Scotia and received degrees from Indiana University, Princeton University, and the Royal Conservatory of The Hague. From 2008 to 2015, she was an associate professor of music at Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle. She enjoys writing for both traditional and less standard instrumentation and has been commissioned by such ensembles and soloists as the Symphony of Nova Scotia, the New York Youth Symphony, Toffel Music Baroque Orchestra, soprano Susie LeBlanc, and viola da gambist Karin Preiselmeyer. She is interested in the relationship between music and sounds from the natural world, particularly bird and other animal songs. She has explored this in a number of compositions, as well as in her doctoral dissertation. She is also interested in folklore, musical storytelling, and making music for and with children. Some of the pieces she has written for old instruments include Folia et Deux for flute and harpsichord, music for magpies, for viola da gamba and quarter tone frets, green notes and falling still for Toffel Music Baroque Orchestra, and Virlas for soprano and viola da gamba. Who is this composer? Was it Linda Caitlin Smith, Emily Doolittle, Ruth Watson Henderson, or Sally Beamish? But a little thinking music.
Yeah, Sarah's guessing D. I was going to guess D as well.
I was too. What's going on?
Yeah, I was just trying to go off of sort of randomly guessing by last names that seem to have any association with the description they do. That's where I was hovering there. We've got two guesses here coming in from others saying they think it's D also. So I think I'll say that also.
Yeah, that's what I was doing too. The other method I have is what I did on the GRE, which was really literally like, well, I haven't picked A in a while, so I guess I'll do that one.
So you guys are all going with D, and it looks like we have D in the comments. Is that right? Everyone wants D?
Yeah.
Sure. That's
Well, unfortunately, you guys are all wrong. It is Emily Doolittle.
Oh, that was my second guess.
You should have gone with it.
No. Should have gone for B.
B, Brandy, Barry Benson. B. Yeah, but I didn't know about her music until I was researching questions for tonight. So you know.
Interesting. Cool.
All right.
All right. Well, that's the end of Leanne's segment. David, did you want to ask her for a social security number or something at this point?
So we're going to take just a moment after, because each of these sections is curated by a different person we have with us. And so I thought we'd just take a moment here and talk with you, Leanne, just a little bit learn a little bit about you. And I would like to actually get to know from each one of you what it was. If you could narrow it down, what was it that brought you into early music? How did you find your way to early music?
Well, I'll try to abbreviate my story because it's kind of long. So I was never really happy playing Bach on modern flute. I thought it was awful, actually. And I didn't really know why until I graduated from undergrad and I went to England and I spent a year studying with Trevor Y. I lived on a sheep farm in the middle of nowhere. And he made each of his, yes, it was a sheep farm. He made each of his students take a plastic Baroque flute home for 3 weeks at a time. And we had to figure out how to play it. He said he would give us a fingering chart and then he made us pick a sonata and we'd have to come back after 3 weeks and perform the sonata for our class, which was very scary. But I quickly fell in love with the tonalities and things that this flute, even though it was plastic, I could still start to see what this new world would open up. And then I finished my year there, and then I came back to the States, and I went to buy a Baroque flute, which I had no idea what I was doing. So I went to the flute convention, which happens every summer, and I tried Baroque flutes in the parking garage because they didn't have practice rooms. So I bought my first flute based on what I did in the parking garage. And then I started taking lessons, and then the rest is history. I went to IU, and then I went to The Hague. So.
Mm-hmm. And you continue to perform in lots of different ensembles, and you have your own teaching studio, right? And and so in your actual personal teaching, is this because I believe you teach at a variety of ages, and do you have is it a mixture, or do you have mostly Baroque Traverso students or modern students, or you kind of keep it balanced?
I would love if I could keep it balanced. I definitely have more modern flute players, but because of the pandemic and teaching online now, I've actually gained several more Traverso students. But yeah, so I have a mix of both, and all different ages on both.
And how long have you been with a Bach Beethoven experience? When did you start?
I think Brandy and I went to school together, and then I think the first time I actually played with them was 2010 after I got back from Holland. And then I've only been the third director for 2 years, maybe 3 years. So I was the last director. So, but I've been along, but officially in this capacity for a couple of years.
Do you have it doesn't have to be the very favorite, but a favorite experience that you've had with the ensemble?
I would have to say it's our carols program, and hearing Thomas make weird animal noise. so we do this ad lib, and we ask the audience for animals and whatnot, and then Thomas on the spot has to make this sound. And he's made some very interesting, like a peacock and dinosaur and like
hippopotamus or whatever.
Yeah.
Hippopotamus.
It is hilarious, and I am crying, laughing, trying to play the flute, and I think that's the best.
And that's not an instrument that's easy to play while you're laughing.
No, it's really hard.
So how did you come up with the segment of the trivia that you do? How did you come up with the idea for what kind of thing you would like to do as part of the trivia show?
Well, I like history, and since we've been doing this a lot, it's kind of evolved. So at the beginning, it was a little my questions were a little shorter, because now I have to kind of give you broader things because we've covered a lot of composers. But I get to do a lot of research, and I really like that part of it. And, I'm finding out new things all the time. And then I just share that with our viewers.
Well, great. Well, onward in the program. We'll move on with the next set here. So let's go. Whoever's taking over.
Well, that would be me, and that's because the game is called Thomas's Revenge and Cat Doppelgangers. And so the premise behind this is usually Leanne starts off and she asks all these questions about instrumentalists and or Traverso players, and I, a lowly singer, I'm like, I don't know any of this. Good thing I'm getting my doctorate in music, which they will promptly take away after the show is over. Or bar me, I'm not sure. So I decided, you know what, let's get a little revenge. And so the way that my game works is when I go to the next screen, you will see 3 names of composers. Great idea for fun concerts. Awesome. Next, 3 names of composers. And then we'll hear a clip about 30 seconds, a minute, kind of depends on what we need. And we're going to use all of our knowledge of composers and style to make an educated guess at who it is. At that point, I will then reveal who the composer was, what the piece was, the performer who was playing it, and then I will reveal my cat doppelganger, which is a picture of a cat that is loosely associated in some way as I see fit. So that's the game. So with that, the first group, these are all modern composers: Dominique Argento, Jennifer Higdon, and Eric Malmquist. I'll play about 30 to 45 seconds worth of music, and then we're going to take a guess at who this is. So here is your first mystery tune. All right, so that's your clip. We hear a nice little harpsichord in the background. Any thoughts who this might be, y'all?
I think I'm going to rule out Eric because I don't think he's written a piece for harpsichord and modern, because we're the modern instruments, right?
Yeah, it's the
it kinda
harpsichord
cuts
is the one.
Right. So I don't think he's actually written that I know of. So I'm going to rule him out, but I don't know if it's A or B.
See, that's funny because I was like remembering a piece that he had written. Oh, what was it? He had even showed me it, and this like clip kind of reminded me of it. So I almost like actually went with Eric. But
I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't remember one.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm remembering or not remembering, but yeah, I don't
David,
know.
any thoughts?
I'm going to go along with Lydia from the Berwick Fiddle Consort, who thinks it's A, but mostly because as a humble vocalist also, Argento is the one I have the most association with in terms of vocal music. But other than that, it's strictly a guess.
Yeah, maybe I'll change it to A. I was like honestly leaning towards like either A or C.
All right, cool. Well, so Berwick Fiddle Consort, you guys are awesome because it was totally Dominic Argento, as were all of our friends in here, sung by Gene Danton. And there's the cutest picture of Dominic Argento. And so, but my cat doppelganger really reflected more the spirit of Gene Danton in her lovely flowing dress. So. That because it doesn't look anything like Dominic Argento right there. Well, I guess the big eyes, the nice,
Yeah,
friendly big eyes.
if it only had glasses, then it would really,
Yeah. All right. So I have one more. David, I went against the grain for this one because I wasn't sure how many people would know the modern stuff. So I wanted to throw both a Baroque piece in, but also one that might be a little bit of a softball for people who may not necessarily know a lot of music or style. So here you can see some of our favorites: Bach, Handel, Porpora. For those who don't know, Handel's arch rival. I'm on Team Porpora, but that's another matter. So here is your music. All right. Who was the composer?
I have no idea.
That the treatises that speak about staging with cats, this is just perfect. I can't.
This actually, I have to admit, Leanne should remember this one. I stole this from an earlier one, but I'm like, I had to bring it back out because it took a long while to get that to go.
That's awesome.
No, it's great. I love this one.
All right. Well, we know who it was. It was Bach. Performed by Voices of Music. Absolutely beautiful. I know some people don't like this because they feel it's overdone, but I think it's a gorgeous piece. And here we have a wonderful, wonderful picture of Bach over here. And the eyes. There was just something about the eyes I had to drew out there. So, yes. So that is my game, and nobody sue us for using that music, please. So
public domain, right?
I gave total attribution. So everybody go enjoy their beautiful music.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, then Thomas, it's your turn in the hot seat, I guess.
Sweet.
But you've already heard a couple of the questions because I kind of wanted to hear from each of you. So what was the way that you found yourself in early music?
I kind of laugh because I feel like I was drug in kicking and screaming, and I mean that in a very loving way. Because like when I did my undergrad as a tenor, or at least I thought I was a tenor, and it didn't go so hot. And then when I went to grad school, I switched to countertenor, and that worked really well. But I really loved singing Rossini and Donizetti and all those kind of like, romantic repertoire and contemporary repertoire. But then I had a friend in Texas who got me a free ride to Baroque Performance Institute through Max von Egmont. So he gave me, each of the instructors get to give a free, basically like a free admission. And so I got Mox's. So I went to study with Mox, and I met my teacher from Chicago, Mark Creighton, there. And that's where I also met like Nancy Silstra and a whole bunch of other folk as well. And I had such a great time, and like kind of being engrossed in this community of people who were really friendly, really nerdy, and in such a wonderful way. Like it was so fun to see so much passion. So I kind of found my way in there. And then I moved to, I joked that I had my quarter life crisis, got my ears pierced, like kicked all my students out of my studio, moved to Chicago like a month later, which is true, and to study with Mark. And so that's when I kind of found myself getting more and more into the early music community. And then really my real segue was actually when Brandy and I reconnected, and I started doing this more like regularly.
Well, and the theme of this evening with the new meets old also seems to really fit what you do and you continue to do is a variety of musical styles in your own performing, both with BBE and with other groups. So how do you, if I don't know if people ask you how you sort of keep that balance, or how do you make the connection between those two things? I think oftentimes people will think about people who specialize in one or the other, or in one particular style. So what would be your answer if someone said, well, you do early music, but you also do new music? How does that work out?
I mean, I think a musician does music. So that's the easiest answer, and I think in today, so actually one of the great things about the pandemic, if there was a good thing about the pandemic, was being at home and preparing a lot of the classes that I'm teaching. I've really done a lot of reading in terms of like philosophy and kind of social uses of music. And like, I feel like we have so segregated music and musicians into these genres that never really existed until kind of recent history. And the music was really more about social, being used in social situations as part of like a practice, a ritual. And musicians just did what musicians did. Musicians kind of created this sonic place for people to experience, to go about doing rituals, whether they're religious or political or societal, or marriage, funeral rites, things like that. And I mean, we do what is asked of us, and kind of living in early music and learning how they did it is versus contemporary music. Like if you were singing Arnold Schoenberg or something, it's no different than like, if you were a pop singer and you pulled out a jazz piece or you pulled out a rock piece or something, you just kind of learn the style and you do your best. And then ultimately you also throw your own spin at it too, because we're all individuals and we all have our own artistic freedom and expression modes. So.
And I think, what you've just said reminds me a lot of what I hear from people who specialize or who at least have some sort of focus in, historically informed performance or performance practice in general, is it's the kind of the allure of learning a variety of styles and really being able to not just do one thing, but to learn, and sort of add the cultural context of what performance practice means a different time for different people, or different people in the same time, that kind of thing. So I think that sounds a lot like it seems to be kind of part of the DNA for people who really want to get involved in the idea of performance practice.
Yeah.
So what would be, in terms of, how long have you now been with Bach Beethoven Experience?
I think it was 2014.
Yeah.
I think 2014, because that's when Brandy and I reconnected again through the same friends for the third time. And I had decided I was a bit of a lapsed musician for a short period. And at that point I was trying to get my feet back in and do more performing. Mm-hmm. And I met Brandy and I saw this was a really cool opportunity because she wasn't doing anything with BBE. And like, I wanted to get more into the early music scene, and Brandy was very friendly. And I was like, well, let me just like throw it out there and see what happens. So yeah, so that's, I've been with BBE since 2014. So this is 7 years.
So wow. Is your favorite experience making animal sounds also, or do you have a different favorite experience?
No, but I'm very pleased to know that will be one of Leanne's great memories of me. And just as a side note on that particular note, it is really hard when somebody says something like rhino, and I'm like, what does that sound like? So you just have to invent something on the spot, which usually is some strange kind of primal grunt, but you know. So I think, for me, I would say shared between the three of us, the most meaningful thing that I've done with the BBE was actually one of the Chicago stories that we did. The very first Chicago stories that we put on, Eric Malmquist wrote, as Brandy said, 2 Assyrian songs. So I was singing literally the story of a woman, Iman, as she was trying to escape to come to the US. And the second one was a poem by a man named Ninos, and that was actually in Assyrian, so I had to get coaching on how to pronounce Assyrian, and that was really fun, and I got to listen to Assyrian music and learn how to do ornamentation and stuff. But what was particularly moving was the premiere for that. We did that in the Green Mill, which is a really famous bar in Chicago that does jazz nights. And all the composers were there. It was completely packed, which was really cool. But in the front, we had reserved seats for Iman and her daughter. And her daughter's a speech pathologist who did my Assyrian coaching with me. And so, like, the first thing that we did, I'm singing her story to her. She's literally, like, as far as the computer is for me. And I tell Eric this. He's written a few pieces for me, and all of them for very intimate moments like that. And they are the hardest sings because of that. And it was so difficult not to cry. It took literally all my strength not to just screw it up for her, because I wanted that to be so meaningful for her. And then, of course, like, I think Brandy and Lane probably remember hearing them start to sob, like, in the audience, and that was just like, oh God, like, how am I going to do this? So, and you know how it is, like, if you're really emotional, David, it's difficult to sing, like, because your body just takes over and you start freezing up, and it's so hard. So share between us that one. But the most fun one I ever did was Beaver Island, which is this Baroque festival up in Lake Michigan, and they bring us out. And we just stay on the island and we do this crazy like folk but Baroque show where we're like stomping and singing and dancing and doing all kinds of like improv music stuff, which is really fun. So that's the most fun. The first one's the most meaningful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Brandy, I guess you're up next for.
Yes. And so this game is like a version of Two Truths and a Lie. And I've called it Unlikely Connections because, again, we're connecting new music to early music. And so how this game goes is I'm going to read 3 different statements, and you're going to tell me which one do you think is the lie. All right. So let's get started here. The first segment is about John Tavener. Okay. So John Tavener's piece, the Funeral Canticle, was, so this is the first statement. John Tavener's piece, Funeral Canticle, was performed and recorded by the Period Instrument Orchestra, Academy of Ancient Music. So that's the first statement. Second statement, At age 17, Taverner performed Beethoven's Fourth Piano Concerto on forte piano with the National Youth Orchestra. Statement number 3. John Taverner thought of Arvo Pärt as a, quote, kindred spirit. And now for some thinking music as you ponder which could be the lie.
I have to say first, I always think this picture of Taverner reminds me of old Salieri by F. Murray, played by F. Murray Abraham in the movie Amadeus. Like they just look like they're the same person. No disrespect on either part. I just feel like he looks like Salieri in this old insane asylum Salieri.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but you're absolutely right. It totally.
I'm leading with the other one. I think it's B because I always associate Pärt and Taverner in my brain closely. So I'm hoping that C is right, and I'm guessing that A is right. So I bet it's B is the lie.
Cool. Anybody out in the audience? Looks like Berwick Fiddle Consort also thinks B.
Do you know which National Youth Orchestra? That was a question that somebody asked.
That's what it's called, the National Youth Orchestra.
Oh, but we don't know where, maybe.
Where?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, and we do have someone who said that they're guessing that maybe it's B because most youth orchestras wouldn't have pianoforte. So that's that's some good reasoning too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you guys would be right. It is, in fact, B is the lie. So Taverner did actually, though, perform a Shostakovich piano trio with the National Youth Orchestra. So, but not, to my knowledge, definitely not he had performed the Fourth Piano Concerto with a different ensemble. Definitely not on forte piano as far as I was reading. So B is the lie. Good job, you guys. All right, let's go to the second segment here. Now, here are the 3 statements. First statement is Arnold Schoenberg wrote a foreword in his textbook called The Preliminary Exercises in Counterpoint that praised Bach's music over all other composers for its perfection. So that's statement number 1. Statement number 2, George Crumb reads through scores by Beethoven every day and has even quoted some of his music in his works. Statement number 3, John Adams had a harpsichord concerto written for him by Manuel de Falla. And now, for a little thinking music.
I don't know enough about George Crumb, and that would be to the great misery of one of my undergrad professors who did his dissertation on George Crumb.
But you should know he's from Charleston, West Virginia, which is very important to know.
The only story, the main story I remember was that when this person was doing their research, they went and talked to his childhood neighbor, and the neighbor said, "Georgie writes music?" That was their response. Because I don't know, and because I'm pretty sure I remember A and C, so I'm gonna guess B too. We've got, let's see, 2 guesses from B from those playing at home. We have 1 guess for A. So yeah, I'm gonna go with B, I think.
B. Any other guesses? I guess Leanne and Thomas, you might know this one. Maybe. Yeah. Cool. Well, it is in fact C. C was the lie.
Wait, did Adams write? Did he himself write a harpsichord? Did he write something for harpsichord?
So,
but not. I can't remember. I thought there was an Adams harpsichord connection. Maybe I'm just.
Sorry, I have a bill of my degree is the comment by Will Floater.
Yes, show that comment, please.
That's funny because a lot of us have degrees of music and we don't know either, so it's
Yes.
fine.
Well, so the third statement was John Adams had a harpsichord concerto written for him by Manuel de Falla. And the truth is that Manuel de Falla wrote a harpsichord concerto, but not for him. It was for Wanda Landowska,
Oh, that
English
makes sense.
harpsichordist.
Yeah.
She was actually one of the first in the 20th century to bring back the harpsichord to the mainstream. So, and I did not know that Manuel de Falla had written a harpsichord concerto before researching this. So that was definitely news to me, but a very pleasant surprise. So yeah, for anybody out there who may have guessed C but didn't write in the comments, you are right. All right, excellent. And then now for the third segment here, I'm not even going to pronounce his first name, but I'm just going to say Ligeti wrote a violin concerto that includes a passacaglia and, quote, references to medieval and Renaissance music. So that's statement one. Statement two, Ligeti composed a chaconne for harpsichord entitled Hungarian Rock. Statement three, he founded the Berlin Academy of Early Music with Wanda Landowska, which served as the earliest beginnings of the early music movement. So,
did I put the wrong one up there?
I don't know. You might have. It's fine. It works. So, thinking music. Well, thinking music as you ponder which could be the lie.
Live performances.
I think Steve Buscemi needs to star in a movie about Ligeti. I think we'll have the same. He would be perfect. I think it would be wonderful.
Actually, David, we should have you do a segment on the show where you just do like
which actors do these random composers look like?
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe. I'm gonna say nobody else is helping out from home right now.
Oh, there's a B. Somebody said B.
And a C. There's also a C.
And a C from Berwick. B sounds made up to me. So that's why I'm going. Yeah, I'm gonna go with B this time.
Oh, and we have one of each. Excellent.
Oh, we have one of each.
Okay.
All the bases are covered.
All bases are covered. Well, whoever guessed C, you are correct.
Oh, Berwick.
He did not found the Berlin Academy of Early Music. So with Wanda. So there you have it. All right.
Excellent. And now, Brandy, you're supposed to reveal your bank account, right?
No, all my offshore assets, that I'm hiding from the government.
So, Brandy, now you get your turn. How did you get started in early music?
Well, so I actually had not heard about period instruments or early music before college. So when I started attending UNT, actually I remember being invited by one of my violin friends, Michelle Bryans, to a Baroque orchestra concert that was in the spring. And I remember hearing that for the first time and just immediately being taken by the sound and just was like, what is this ensemble? I need to be a part of this. And literally looked up Lyle Nordstrom and just went and knocked on his office door and was like, so I want to be in Baroque orchestra. How do I do that? So
he probably thrust a violin into your hands and was like, let's go.
Yeah, he totally was. He was totally like, well, yeah, let's make this happen, and then before I knew it, I was signed up, for Baroque orchestra and also lessons with Cynthia Roberts. And I remember actually my very first rehearsal with Baroque orchestra. We were just like, oh yeah, like let's just, play Vivaldi's Four Seasons or whatever. And I'm like, Tammy Meredith is, I got to thankfully stand next to her because she gave me a quick lesson. I'm like, here's how you hold it. And I'm just like, okay, great, and she had this great little scarf thing that she had, gotten around her neck and like, had figured out a great way to hold it and like keep it on the shoulder and, all this stuff. And like, yeah, this is how much you tighten your bow and like, all this stuff. And of course, we're all playing a half step below. And I'm just like, all right, cool. Baptized by fire. And we started immediately on the last movement of Summer. That was literally my first rehearsal. So, I was figuring out a lot of stuff. Like, and then by the end of that 2 hours, I was like totally fried. So, but yeah, that was pretty fun times for sure. But like Leanne, I felt always that, whenever I was being taught Bach and stuff, that I always felt like something was missing. I didn't know what was missing, but I just kind of felt like there was. And so, and I always had a lot of questions and I never really, felt like I could get the answers, in some ways from, not putting it down or anything, but like, I just, found that with early music, there was just a lot more of that encouragement to go explore and and then intonation and temperaments and all these things started to make sense to me because I'm like, well, yeah, like why do we tune like totally pure fifths, but then like the instruments, if we're playing with the piano, it never quite, lines up. And like there were and why do leading tones, just everything like just started to like make sense, after I got more involved in early music and took Lyle and Lyle's Lygium, and then Dr. Lenore McCroskey was teaching Baroque performance practice. That opened my eyes to so many things. It answered a lot of questions for me as well. And after I went in for a modern violin performance degree, and that's what I got at UNT ultimately. But I was taking Baroque orchestra. I had a whole bunch of Baroque credits. I was also taking a whole bunch of jazz credits. In fact, some people were asking me at some point if I was doing a double major, and I wasn't. I was just taking a lot of credits, just because that's what you could do at UNT. And I took up to the ICE exam actually in jazz. And then, when we were thinking about grad school, because I actually did, not many people know this, but I did do a year of master's at UNT right after my undergrad in violin performance again. I went through the whole audition for, process again and auditioned on modern violin and whatever, and did that year. But it was funny, I did this year of modern violin performance, but all I took was chamber orchestra, Baroque performance practice, and like lessons with Cynthia, basically. And I took lessons with my major teacher to keep my scholarships, but it was just to buy me a little bit of time. And then at the end of that, I decided, well, I only really wanted to go to IU to study with Stanley. And that was the only place I auditioned. And I had just decided that was what that was going to be. And so then I, like several of my other colleagues, like went up to IU, made that pilgrimage, and, studied with Stanley. And that was that. I mean, I heard the sounds and had to immediately just get involved in early music and learn the stuff. And and just the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn, the more, and just dig deeper and deeper. So.
Well, we heard a little at the beginning of the hour. We heard a little bit about how Bach Beethoven experience came into being, and so I think we've heard sort of that part of your story. But do you have a moment that sort of stands out for you in your time with the ensemble?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, so I don't know how many people know this about me either. I actually grew up playing bluegrass music. And so, I have this very much like deeply entrenched folk side to me. And I think one of the like really defining moments for me with the ensemble still has to be when we produced The Gentle Shepherd, and, Scotland's first opera. And so that was one of the, I discovered that piece on accident, to be honest, and then was just like, we need to do this. But the more that we collaborated, or the more that we like dove into putting this together, it just opened up a lot more of just exploring historical fiddling, and so then I started to do a lot more research concerning that. I still do a lot of that today. That also was the catalyst to us starting the Folk But Baroque series, after we did the Gentle Shepherd. But I loved doing the Gentle Shepherd, and just feeling like both my folk musician side and my Baroque side united, so that was a pretty special experience.
I think you're going to talk a little bit about the album that's coming out from BBE this Saturday, coincidentally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this is an album that we actually recorded pre-COVID, and thankfully had gotten all the recording stuff out of the way before the pandemic hit, so that we could mix and edit and master in that time. But this is the culmination of 2 years of Chicago Story cycles. So actually on the album you will hear the Assyrian songs, as were mentioned, as well as the 3 songs about the Mexican brothers in Pilsen. But there is a piece written by Kurt Westerberg called Swedes in Chicago that's actually about the Swedish immigrant community in Andersonville. Specifically, his grandfather immigrated from Gothenburg here to Chicago, and had, in the piece is structured by diary entries and excerpts and the music that accompanies those. And his brother Kermit speaks in Swedish over those parts of the music. The album kicks off with a suite called the Bloomingdale Suite, written by Ronnie Cooler, and it's like little musical vignettes about the Bloomingdale Trail, which is it used to be a train line, now it's an elevated park where people can ride their bikes, walk, run, commute in that way, and really cool area of Chicago. And then the 5th piece, what closes the album, is actually 2 pieces by Heidi Justin that are written about 2 minority women in leadership positions, one in the nonprofit sector and one in the for-profit sector, and some of the struggles and triumphs of being that leader in that leadership position. And so one of the pieces is written as an instrumental da capo aria form. The second one is written with a soprano singing vocalist and conducting the ensemble as the woman leader, kind of presiding over a meeting and like going through like different ideas being introduced, moments of conflict, moments of harmony. It's a really cool concept, and very unique. Again, we kind of touched on this earlier, but very unique instrument combinations that you won't see anywhere else outside of this album. So
awesome.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So we're very proud of the work that.
Yeah. So Saturday we'll have a few of the composers on to talk to them about their process, their style. We'll preview some of the music that'll be on the album too. So we'll get to hear the studio. Actually, I think that may be my first time hearing the studio recording. So we'll talk a little bit about that and some of the future plans, maybe about the oratorio coming up as well. So
great. And when's the next BBE live?
So that'll be happening next week. So a week from tomorrow will be the next BBE live.
Mm-hmm. And those are generally at noon Central Time. Is that?
Yeah.
Noon Central Time.
Every Friday except tomorrow at noon Central Time, and you get to play similar sorts of games with us. We always have a special guest, some fun chit chat afterwards, and we always keep it fun and lively here at the BB. So
And we put links to the Facebook page, to the website, all of that in the comments, so anybody can find out how, and of course the whole like, follow, and share to help everybody out and to know about upcoming events that'll be happening. And speaking of that, we just want to invite everyone to visit the EMA website, find out more about the Well-Timbered Musician Wellness Series that we're running, that tonight is part of. It runs through the month of March. There are free sessions for physical wellness, for mental wellness, for cooking and baking and humor and all of that. Coming up this weekend, we have Sarah Jane Kenner, violinist and the hungry musician, who is going to be leading a cooking session on Saturday evening. On Sunday, we have the first of 4 free Baroque dance sessions with Sarah Edgar, who's with Haymarket Opera Company in Chicago, and she'll be leading that on Sunday afternoon. And then our next Mental Wellness Monday will be at 7 p.m. Eastern on Monday. And you can find out all about all of those at earlymusicamerica.org/wellness. All of these events are presented free of cost, and practically every single one of them is open to everyone, regardless of EMA membership, and anyone's welcome to join us. So I wanted to thank the 3 of you for joining us this evening, for putting on a great show, for stumping us many times. And we'll look forward to next month, and we'll have specifics about the February early music night and the themes going forward. We'll have those on that website and on our social media, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter and Instagram really soon. So any parting words from any of you?
We didn't get to our social security numbers, but we can send those to you later.
We'll save time next time. That'll be
okay.
And we'll have special guests. We didn't say we'll have special guests. We'll announce our special guests for the February installment of Early Music Trivia Night closer to the date. We'll have some special guests joining us, and we'll learn a little bit about them, and then put them on the hot seat in terms of all the trivia for next time, so it won't just be me.
Could we get Bill Murray to come do it?
I was thinking F. Murray Abraham.
Well, we did a show in Chicago at at Martyrs or something, and I think I actually wrote Bill Murray's lawyer and said, "Could you come?" Because I heard that's the way you get him to come. So if you have any connections, we'd love it if Bill Murray.
We'll tag him and see if he decides if he wants to come and do Early Music Trivia Night. I'd be curious to know what Bill Murray knows about classical music and early music.
I would love to. Yes. Okay, but just throwing it out there, you never know when you say something. So
that's right. You might as well. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you everybody for joining us and watching along from home this evening. We hope you'll join us next time. And please do make sure to go over to Bach and Beethoven Experience website and their social media, find out more about the album that's coming up this Saturday. And so we'll see all of you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Having us.
Bye.